Now let's bring in Cato Pastoll for a deeper look on how this is going to affect businesses in our country. He is the CEO of Loop Financial, a cross-border banking platform for Canadian businesses. We heard Olivia report on a potential multi-billion-dollar aid package to the Canadians to help. So does a pandemic-style bailout, would that be something to help business in this country?
I don't believe that's the right approach to supporting businesses. There's no doubt that if we do see tariffs come into effect, we're going to need to do something and the government is going to need to respond. However, I think those relief measures need to be targeted and focused on helping companies that need the most support. And I think the general pandemic style approach of putting money in the pocket of every company is too general and too broad.
Could this actually benefit small business somehow, these tariff threats, or these tariffs if they come to fruition?
I don't believe that they will benefit small businesses. I mean, what I will say is that small businesses tend to be more nimble and they have the ability to react a lot faster than larger organizations. But at the end of the day, it is a tax. We work with a lot of Canadian exporters who sell into the US. Most of their revenue actually comes in US dollars, so they're owning a lot of money from the US. If they were to see a tariff, that would likely result in a significant drop in their revenue. So it would be a very challenging situation for many small businesses.
A drop in their sales across the border because their products will become more expensive, so and so. All right, so the White House press secretary confirmed today that February 1st is the planned date. She says Trump didn't tell her anything different when she spoke to him last night. What are the implications then of a 25% tariff on Canadian goods?
Yeah, candidly, it's hard to go into all of the details without understanding exactly what that tariff measure is going to look like. What I will say is that between Canada and the U.S., we have over $800 billion of trade happening every year between those two countries. We fundamentally rely on each other. The U.S. also relies on Canada for the most part for things like energy, for manufacturing resources. There's a lot of industries that heavily rely on Canadians and Canadian exporters. So to think that that would just evaporate is not going to happen. We have to continue to work together. And so hopefully it's the start of a negotiation that ultimately results in us creating a win-win deal for both sides. But it's definitely going to have a short-term detrimental impact if we do really see a 25% tariff come into play.
Should we retaliate?
It's a good question. I think in a very measured way.
Like matching dollar for dollar, maybe?
I don't know if it's about necessarily matching dollar for dollar, but I think any reaction that we have should be bringing them to the table and having an open discussion about what are the objectives and how do we work together to create a deal that ultimately is beneficial for both sides. Again, both countries really heavily rely on each other. The U.S. is actually a net importer in many regards, but it's also a net exporter for other industries. So they export more manufacturing goods to Canada than they import. And so, for example, if we were to put a retaliatory measure on manufacturing, that might be a short-term response, but I don't think that that's the long-term solution. The long-term solution is how do we get a trade deal between Canada and the U.S. that ultimately is good for both sides?
I feel like you keep mentioning win-win. Aren't we in a win-win situation right now? Isn't the deal we have currently that we worked out, the USC, isn't it working? Why do this? It seems like he's just using this as a lever for other things, but is the relationship between our countries and trade broken right now?
Look, I think fundamentally the new administration has certain objectives, and so we have to take those seriously. Our policymakers need to hear out what are their objectives and what are the things that they're looking to achieve. I think ultimately in the long term, like I said, a tariff is not going to be beneficial for either side. We really need to make sure that there's a deal that ultimately benefits Canadians and Americans. And if the new administration doesn't think that the deal currently benefits Americans, then let's alter the terms of the deal to make sure that both sides do feel like we're winning. Canadians for sure benefit tremendously from the two-way trade relationship, and so we're reliant on the U.S. We don't want to move away from the U.S. fundamentally, but we do have to start thinking about what are other strategies so that Canada is not only focusing on the U.S. as our trading partner.
Yeah, physically we can't move away from them. They're right next door. What can the government do then to mitigate this? Are these businesses you work with, are they looking to you for answers like how do we deal with this coming storm?
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to your question about is pandemic type relief the right response?
You said no.
I would say no. A better response would be starting to think about the long term. If we want to really diversify as a country and not be overly reliant on that trade relationship, we need to incentivize Canadian exporters to start going to sell to countries outside the United States. So I'd like to see more measured programs that actually incentivize Canadian companies to start selling to the United Kingdom or selling to countries in the Eurozone. Those have been great relationships that Canada has had for a long time. Why not lean into those relationships and use this as an opportunity to start expanding our horizons?
Yeah, we need more than one buyer for our products, and we're learning that the hard way right now. Thank you. This is Cato Pastoll. He's the CEO of Loop Financial, a cross-border banking platform for Canadian businesses, and he joined us in studio. Thank you.
Thank you.